Hello and welcome to the Westcity Church podcast. If you'd like to get to know us more, find us at westcitychurch.com.au. We really hope that you're encouraged by today's message.
Thank you. I don't know who was here last week when Karen did the communion talk, but she was vulnerable and shared one line that just struck me because I'd felt much the same. But she said, I've been believing some lies about myself lately, and that would definitely be true for me as well. And after church, I was just ended up sitting with a few people, and I was sharing how that struck with me. And really everybody in our little group that was sat there was saying much the same thing for lots of different reasons. The thoughts that we have, the things that we might think about ourselves. And really, I guess if you know what I'm talking about, we get very dark very quickly, and it can become this, dark's the word, but it's really all happening in your mind and how in your thinking, but it can be, you can feel very trapped in that space, and it can be really dark and negative. But I actually felt I was feeling better sort of through that week, but I felt kind of stirred up from that conversation, and I just was thinking, I need to remind myself who I am in Christ and who God says I am, of how there's a light that shines in the darkness, and that darkness can't ever overcome it, about how each day we can put on the armor of God as we step out into the world, about how we're made in God's image and how he loves us perfectly. And all these things that I guess if you have been around church your whole life and you're a child, you can remember just those little, phrases and verses that people would speak, but how that's really true for us. When my I had 3 kids under 5, so when they were all very little, I ran into someone who I hadn't seen since before I had kids. So she's like, whoa, that's a lot that's happened in 5 years. And I said, yeah, tell me about it. Do you have any advice? Because she had 4 much older children. And I remember her saying, she said, just try and be present to now, because so much of the time we're thinking about what's happened in the past or we're worrying about the future. But she's like, it will go by really quick. Try and be present to now. I didn't, spoiler alert, that's really hard to do. But I've been reading or listening to The Power of Now, the book, and for someone who can be quite anxious, it speaks right to you, because what it's talking about is how so much of our pain and suffering, like what I was saying about and what Karen shared about how this is happening sort of in our thinking, so much of our suffering and pain is being caught up in the past, what we might regret, what we wonder if we should have done it differently, and a lot of worry and thoughts about the future, things that haven't actually transpired yet. And the author says this thing, he says, take where you are right now, this moment, like the pinpoint of this moment, do you have any problems? So I was listening to this when I was driving to pick up my kids after work. And I was very present to what I was listening to. The sun was coming through the window and I was driving, and I thought, no, in this present moment, I actually don't have any problems. But on any other day of that week when I was driving to pick them up, I could have been, I'm 5 minutes late. They already don't like after school care. I need to hurry up and get there. And I wonder how their day's been. This has been going on for them. I've got my own problems in the background. I might have been thinking over my day. Should I have done this? How is it going at work? And all of that. And it feels heavy, like I have so many problems. But the more present we can be, literally to the pinpointed moment, we can actually be present to Jesus and know that it's okay, this present moment, and you can take it moment by moment. So this morning, what I would pray for all of us is that whatever's going on for us, and there definitely are problems, and you might have a problem right now, you might be in physical pain, and that is in your very moment. But I pray that we could put those things aside and be present here this morning, and especially when we come to the communion table, the people speaking the words over you, you hold the bread, you dip the bread, you eat it, you're kind of chewing it. I just pray we can be present and experience God and his love here, and how that connects us all to God and to each other. And I pray that the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus today.
Good morning, guys. We are on our third bit of our third section of Messy People of Genesis, and I have the joy of talking about Jacob and Esau. Now, I'll be honest, I have a bit of trepidation with the Old Testament. I find it weird and scary. I don't really like it. New Testament's really easy. I just kind of like to sit there, hover there. And so when I got asked to do Jacob and Esau, I was like, oh, yeah, that's cool. I might be away. And very thankfully, one of the absolute sages of our church, Kathleen, reached out to me and said, hey, do you want to grab a coffee? And I was like, absolutely I do, because I'm very scared. And Kathleen, is Kathleen here today? Awesome, thank you. Kathleen did the theological equivalent. I was sitting at Kathleen's dining room table, and she made me a green tea, and I was sitting there. Something happened, and for the next 2 days, I kind of just couldn't talk. I was just like, whoa, like this. It was insane. And what she did was she basically got a baseball bat and snuck up behind me. My head was spinning after talking to Kathleen. That was 25 minutes. Kathleen has so much knowledge to impart. And as a result, I did so much research on Jacob and Esau. I can tell you everything about them, and I still feel like I know nothing. So, thank you to Kathleen. But Kathleen was like, where do we start? And I was like, look, before we start, I've got one kind of thing that I can kind of point out in the Old Testament, which is a bit of a funny thing that comes up. And she's like, what is it? And I said, there's just a lot of brothers. There's a lot of stories about two different brothers, and then they have a fight. And she goes, that's a great place to start. And so before even jumping in, Kathleen set it up for me. As I like to say, and others like to say, a text without a context is a sure sign you're being conned. A text without a context, sure sign you're being conned. So Kathleen set up the context, and I'm ripping everything today. I'm just ripping straight out of Kathleen. So if you don't like something, go see her about it, okay? But Kathleen kind of kicks off, and you just have to yell out and correct me when I'm going to get it wrong, Kathleen. So Genesis is written in this context of a people that are foreign from the place, or foreign from who they have known themselves to be. There's been 12 tribes in Israel. The 10 of them have been wiped out, and these people have left their land, come back to the land, and they're like, who are we? What is our culture? Where did we come from? What do we do? Because without a sense of your own history, it's really hard to have a sense of who you are. When I want to have an understanding of who I am, I look at my dad, and I look a lot like him, and I make stupid jokes like him, and I'm lucky enough to have so many beautiful features of my mother, and they're a fantastic signpost to where I've come from. Even understanding how did we get to live here in Perth, I have to look backwards. And so for these people who have essentially had their history wiped, Genesis is written in a context of being like, okay, how do we make sense of this? And so Kathleen and I, we went through Genesis 1, 2, 3, which was really helpful because it's going to set everything up. And I wanted to set some stuff up today. And, we'll get through the chicken roll. I used to play in a jazz band. We called it the chicken roll analogy. And the jazz band teacher said, you have to put all the good chicken at the start and at the end. And the middle is just filling. Like, don't worry about the middle. So we're going to start big and we're going to end big, hopefully. So, but Genesis 1, God creates. God gets busy making the world. Fantastic, beautiful. Don't need to go too far into that. But there is something that's really interesting about when he creates what he creates, which we'll come back to. Genesis 2, we have Adam and Eve, the story of the creation of man. Eve's there. He goes, hey, I want a buddy. And God goes, what? Here's another one. So, and then Genesis 3, we have the fall. And we're going to particularly focus on the section where Eve is reaching for the apple and the snake is at her heel saying, do it. and in Genesis 14 and 15, Genesis 3, 14 and 15, we have this thing that's really important called the proto-evangelium. And the proto-evangelium is the first time that God makes a promise to us. God lines out what our inheritance will be. And we're going to come back to that. But look, some of the other things I want you guys to be aware of today before we jump in is the different themes. The Bechor, right? So a lot of these conflicts between the brothers, they centre around who is the firstborn, who should receive the inheritance. I was born first. I should receive a double share of the inheritance. But with being the Bechor, you also have to take care of your whole family. So if my brother Phil goes down the road and he kicks, and he kicks Tin in the shin, and then Ting's family is like, that's not very good, let's go to war with them, then I've got to be like, Phil, pull your head in, we're going to have to give him some cattle or something. I don't know, I'm making this up. The second thing that you're going to notice is this theme of the first will be last, last will be first, the last child is going to be chosen over the first. So again, tying with Bechor, first child, second child stuff. And lastly, God's desire for reconciliation and redemption. That proto-evangelium. So anyway, jumping in. So we've got, next slide, we have Esau and Jacob. They're born. There's a whole lot of trouble in the childbirth. Jacob is described as smooth, quiet, and a heel grabber or a deceiver. Esau is red, hairy, and fiery, which this is probably the best thing I had. And the story of Jacob and Esau is it's awesome. In fact, I actually have to set this up beforehand. I did a whole. Thank you, Josh. Thanks, mate. Whoop. Witness me. This is the chiastic structure. I told you Kathleen broke my brain. So this is the chiastic structure of Jacob, because there is so much into it, and to be honest, we're probably only going to focus on the first half of this when we're going through the story, but it starts with a genealogical note in Genesis. So we'll go through Abraham's family, Abraham's death and burial, and he's like, look, both of the sons were there, and then he goes through Ishmael's descendants. Importantly, Ishmael, first son, Isaac, second son. What happened there? Weird. And then, I've already skipped a bit. Second bit, difficult births. So we have this section. The babies jostled with each other within her, and she said, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire to the Lord. The Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Taking the birthright. Jacob basically steals his brother's birthright. So essentially, we'll read from the text. Once when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau came from the open country, famished, and he said to Jacob, quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished. Red. Interesting. There's a side note here. That's why he's called Edom, which is a reference to Adam, which again we'll come back to. Jacob replied, first sell me your birthright. Weird for a bit of stew. Look, I'm about to die, said Esau. He's been dramatic. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling him his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and some lentil stew. He ate and drank, then got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. And I was saying to Kathleen, oh, that dirty Jacob, how dare he? And then to which Kathleen replied, like, if you're going to sell your birthright for some like lentil stew, You probably deserve to. You don't. Probably don't deserve that birthright that you've got. Then the next part is people. There's Isaac and Rebecca. They walk into a place called Gerar. Rebecca's in danger. Part E, Jacob and Esau's blessing. So Jacob steals Esau's blessing, comes to his dad, covers himself in a goat skin, says, listen, I smell and look like my brother. Here's some stew that my mum cooked. I am my brother. Lies to him. Deceives him. This Jacob guy, wicked guy, really bad dude. Don't really like him too much. Until Jacob encounters God in a dream. God comes to him in a dream and says, listen, we're going to make nations out of you. We're going to make everyone, north, south, east, maybe some in the west. You're going to be as plentiful as sand on the earth, So Jacob travels. Covenant deception. Jacob marries Laban's daughters, Leah and Rachel. Don't marry sisters if you can avoid it, guys. That's my advice today. That's not really a prescriptive thing in the text. If you can avoid marrying daughters. But interestingly, Laban lies to Jacob. Jacob thinks he's going to marry Rachel. He loves Rachel. He thinks she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen. And then, weirdly, wakes up after the wedding. He's like, wait a minute, I married the wrong one. Anyway, so don't trick people into marrying your other daughter as well. God blesses Leah with fertility, and then you get to the culmination in X, or the middle of the chiastic structure, the birth of Joseph. And then basically just flows back out after that. But there's a lot in this text, guys. So talk to Kathleen before you read it, okay? Like, it's really freaky. But we have this thing that happens, which is the strange thing, which is when Jacob is born. Sorry, when Esau is born, he comes out of the womb grabbing at his brother's heel, almost to say, "I wanted to be first." It's in the text. It's a really important part for you guys to keep in mind. And what happens is we essentially do have Esau give up his birthright to his brother. He's tricked out of it, and then he goes and takes the blessing from the father. We have the second child becoming the Behor over the first. Really, really critical for this text. But this isn't the first time it happens in the Old Testament, and it's certainly not the last. We also have this happen with Shem, Ham and Japheth, Ishmael and Isaac, Jacob and Esau, obviously, Leah and Rachel, Joseph and all of his brothers, Tamar and the second twin, Ephraim and Manasseh, Judah with Reuben, Simeon and Levi. Importantly, it also kind of happens in Genesis 1 with the animals. See, the animals are created first and then the humans, but yet it's we who kind of got to carry dominion over the animals, carry dominion over the earth. Surely within the way that we think about the Behor, it should have been the animals that had dominion over us. But God didn't give them opposable thumbs, so. And then it happens, and of course it happens with Cain and Abel. Cain is born, then they have, Abel's born, Abel is born, and then we have Cain, and they take gifts to God and they say, listen, God, here's these gifts, here's these things that we've provided for you. And God goes, like one of those more than the other. I'm simplifying it, by the way. And then Cain gets angry and kills his brother Abel. And God's like, Cain, where is your brother Abel? But you guys did that last week, so I don't want to get too stuck into that one. But look, from here, there's this important thing that happens, which is God doesn't not love the firstborn. In fact, God doesn't love any number of where you are more or less than the other. He's not ripping you off. God even says it to Cain. Then the Lord said, why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It feels like a raw deal when you don't receive the inheritance that you expected to receive. It feels like a raw deal when God or maybe your brother pushes in the way and says, this is actually going to be my thing and I'm going to take it from you. I'm sure that there are, like myself, there are people in this room that have had family members or whatever who have had issues with inheritance, right? Anyway, look, my dad and my Uncle John, twins, they had a big blow up over inheritance. Our grandfather left a will, the will wasn't observed, rah, rah, rah. And the issue that caused in our family for what will be generations now, we've lost so much as a family because of the tossing over what they believe should have been their rightful inheritance, what isn't their rightful inheritance. But the beauty of Jacob is that people work through broken, dysfunctional people. God's there with them. In fact, we actually have Jacob meeting up with God at some point, and he wrestles with God on a river. God changes him, and he says to him, "You'll now be called Israel." You, like me, might be a messy person. Kathleen talked a lot about the shadow work that we need to do, that Jacob actually gets to do in these passages. The work that Jacob does on himself to become Israel, the wrestling that he actually does. Is he confronted with God? Is he confronted with his brother? Is he confronted with himself? I'm a really messy person, and it's something that I want to tell myself that I work on, but sometimes I don't do a great deal of work on it. And I know there are people like me here and people that are far better than me, and it's so great that you guys are here. The wonderful thing about God is that God has a way of working through people like us. I don't know how, but I've witnessed it. Not so much in my life, because I don't like to apply that scrutiny to myself, but certainly in the lives of others. God takes someone whose brother is likened to Adam, and who Jacob is most likened to the snake that sat at the heel of Eve. And he goes, this guy, the deceiver, the cheater, this is the one who I'm going to create nations out of. God has a wonderful way of working with mess. God is there in the mess. God is present in the mess. And we're so thankful to have a God that can work through the mess, because we are so messy. This earth is so broken and things can be so wrong, but we're so glad to have a God that's there with us in this stuff. The truth is that we still not crushed the head of the snake. We still reach for the apple, knowing full well that we're actually called to jump on the snake's head. We still choose ways that don't look like God, don't seek to appease God, don't reflect a God that's loving. We still choose ways that actually say, I know a better way. We still engage in deceit. We still do all these things that breaks the heart of God. But the important thing is that the proto-evangelium, right? This beautiful section, I should actually just read it to you. The Lord said to the serpent, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. This is the important bit. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. The call for us to defeat death, the call that's in here, because the big question is who will crush the head of the snake? Who will overcome death? Who will overcome the deceit? Who will overcome all these things that continuously drag us back and throw us out of the Edom for which God calls us? We know the answer is going to be Jesus, right? We know that. That's the beautiful thing. Why do we keep grasping for the apple? Why do we keep going back to something that we know that can hurt us, that can hurt others, that doesn't look anything like Christ? Why? How? I don't know about you. I wrestle so much with everything that is happening abroad and in our own country. I think one of the beautiful things about this church is that we have a fantastic population of people that are so socially conscious and mindful of what is happening in their world, whether it's in their own backyard, literally in the soil behind their house, or happening abroad. I've been gripping and struggling with the things that are happening in the Middle East. It's really hard to preach on Israel as a place and do the research on where the places are and not think about the fertility of that ground and how that ground is made less fertile with silica and heavy metals. How that land is cursed, and how we continue to grasp for the apple in a land that we should really be seeking to crush the head of the snake. We have a God that is present with people in the rubble, but a place that reflects a place that is godless. It is really hard to see God in these places. Most recently, I was talking to a friend, and we talked about, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I can't not touch it, and I hope that you guys give me the grace to touch it. But we talked about how is it that we can look backwards, right? And not choose to crush the head of the snake and still grasp for the apple? How is it that we can go through the horrors of the Holocaust and have people that wish to go for a shower and receive gas, and near on 80 years later have people that go for aid and are shot trying to receive that aid? How is it that we continue to choose the apple over crushing the head of the snake? God is in the midst. The messiest part about me is that I sometimes don't try and look for God. I reach for the apple and want to accuse and yell and scream and kick and fuss, and I choose to not look for God in the midst of these places because it's so hard to find God. That is one of my sins. But God, like, the fantastic thing about the story about Jacob and Esau is that God is there because God is at work with messy people, even when we don't want to observe God at work in the lives of others. The person that you hate most is the person that God is so active in their life right now. You play a role in that person also learning to crush the head of the snake and not taking the apple. This is the beauty, this is the absolute beauty of the story of Jacob and Esau. God is at work with messy people in the Bible. God is at work with messy people in our lives, and God is at work in the mess in the world. The proto-evangelium is our inheritance. What awaits us in the end is that death will be conquered, the head of the snake will be stepped on, and that we will be reunified with God. No more will God look at Israel or look at anywhere else in the world in which we are at war with ourselves or with others. God will not say to us anymore, Cain, where is your brother Abel? Redemption is coming. The good news is here. The good news has arrived. The kingdom is here. It's just not well dispersed yet. Let's pray. God, break our hearts, because a heart that is broken is a heart that is open, like Jacob. See the mess in us, God, and work with that mess and pull every string out of us and plait them into something strong, God, that reflects you. May we wrestle with you, God, and learn to walk differently, limping as a sign of your work in our lives, God. May we be moved to give up the sweetness of the apple, God, and choose in every way to attack the head of the serpent, God, and to choose life in every way over death, and to choose peace and goodness and restoration and unity over all those other things. Amen.
Thank you so much for joining us. Each week at Westcity, we say a benediction together. We do this because we believe that the purpose of the church is to be a caring community for the world, and that as we go and serve others, we enter into Christ's work of welcome, restoration and healing, both for us and others. We believe that in doing so, we get to see and encounter Christ. So let's say the benediction together. We come together as the church to be reminded of the go of Christ. So we will go out and feed the hungry, go out and clothe the naked, go out and fight for justice, go out and end oppression, go out and proclaim anew the old story, go out and associate with those who don't look like us, think like us, act like us, and don't even like us. And we'll do it all in the name of the one who sent us. His name is Jesus.